So there's a really big story developing in Japan that's making waves all around the world. The government is trying to get a court order to dissolve a religious organization, the Family Federation. Now, as our source material shows, this is way more than just a local legal issue. We're talking about a potential clash with international human rights, a major test for Japan's own constitution, and a really intense debate over what religious freedom even means today.
All right, so here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we're going to dig into why this dissolution order is seen as a clash with global human rights standards. Then we'll pull back and look at why the whole world, especially the United States, is paying such close attention. From there, we'll explore the argument that this move might actually go against the very spirit of Japan's constitution. And finally, we'll tackle the really big question: could this set a dangerous precedent for everyone?
Okay, let's jump right in with that first point, the clash with global norms. The core of the argument we're examining here is that this isn't just about one group. It's about a move that could be seen as challenging the very foundation of international human rights law.
And that really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? Our source material frames this whole situation as a high-stakes collision. On one side, you have a country's domestic power, and on the other, you have these fundamental human freedoms that it has promised to uphold on the world stage. What happens when those two things smash into each other?
To really get what's at stake, we have to talk about this key international standard, Article 18. Think of it as a cornerstone of human rights. It protects everyone's freedom of religion. But what's really crucial here is that it sets a very high bar for any government that wants to interfere with that freedom. And that's exactly what critics say is happening in this case.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting. A 2024 report submitted to the UN, according to our source, basically attacks the legal basis for this dissolution order on three fronts. First, it says that using civil lawsuits, private disputes over things like money, to completely shut down a religion just doesn't meet that super high standard we just talked about. Second, the order apparently leans on this really vague idea of public welfare, something the UN has already told Japan to be careful with. And third, it brings up the concept of mind control, a term that many courts, especially in Europe, have already thrown out as legally unsound.
And this whole legal fight isn't just happening in a bubble. It's actually setting off some serious alarm bells way beyond Japan's borders. As we're about to see, folks in the United States, including some very high-level officials, are starting to speak up.
Wow, just look at how quickly things escalated here. This timeline shows that what started in late 2024 with a pretty direct criticism from a key religious advisor, well, it snowballed. It quickly became a major talking point for the administration, leading to a whole new White House office and high-profile statements that directly link a country's religious freedom record to its relationship with the U.S.
And this quote right here, it just hammers the point home. The source highlights this statement as a really clear signal from the vice president. He's basically saying that a country's stance on religious freedom could now have a direct impact on its diplomatic standing. This isn't just about values, it's a potential game changer for foreign policy.
So we've seen the view from the outside. Now let's bring it all the way back home to Japan itself. Because the argument presented in the source isn't just that this violates global norms, but that it might actually go against the very spirit of Japan's own foundational principles.
The analysis we're looking at goes right to this powerful line from Japan's own constitution. The argument is simple. Japan has this incredible national aspiration to banish intolerance and be a leader for peace. And the big question being asked is whether these actions are actually putting that very aspiration to the test.
And this slide does a great job of showing what some see as a constitutional double threat. The source argues that this isn't just about one right. It's about putting two fundamental freedoms on the line. Article 20, freedom of religion, and Article 21, freedom of assembly. And the logic is pretty straightforward. If the government can dissolve a religious group this way, what's to stop them from going after any other organization they don't like?
Okay, so this all leads us to our final and maybe most crucial section. What happens next? This is where the source really digs into that slippery slope argument and explores what the long-term consequences could be if this dissolution order actually succeeds.
This lays out the potential chain reactions so clearly. The argument isn't really about this one organization. It's about creating a new, powerful legal tool. Once that tool exists, the source contends that any government in the future could pick it up and use it against any religious or social group it decides is inconvenient. And that, right there, is how the rights of all minority groups could be put at risk.
And you really have to grasp this key point to understand the gravity of the situation. According to the source, this has never happened before in post-war Japan.
No religious corporation has ever been threatened with dissolution because of civil lawsuits. That's why this is seen as such a landmark case, and why so many are worried about the precedent it could set.
So, this is where we land. Ultimately, this specific case in Japan is being used to ask a much, much bigger question, one that democracies all over the world are constantly wrestling with. It leaves us with this incredible challenge, thinking about the delicate, difficult balance between a government's duty to protect its citizens and its duty to protect one of our most fundamental human rights. Where exactly is that line?